Great, we're live. Well, welcome to those of you who are coming into the conversation now. My name is Ginny Radmall and I run a company called the Ivy Way, which is based in London. I coach around 1,000 startups every year on their pitch and also work with some of the biggest tech companies in the world. And it's my pleasure today to interview Tom Tsao, the founder of Gobi Partners. Tom founded Gobi Partners back in 2002, and they have since invested in over 260 companies, raised 13 funds, and have offices in 12 places around the world. We're going to hear a little bit more from Tom in a bit about Gobi Partners and some of his experience. But to give you a little bit more context, Tom has been named one of the top venture capitalists in China from 2013 to 2017. One of his biggest accolades as well is that the Seinfeld episode Movie Phone was inspired by Tom himself. So Tom, it's great to have you with us today. To give a few ground rules just to this conversation, if you could keep your microphone muted and your camera off during this conversation, that would be great. And that will also allow you to put us on speaker view, which will be in the top right-hand corner of your screen, so you can see Tom and I having this conversation this morning. We'll take some questions near the end of the call. So for about the first 45 minutes, I've got some questions to throw Tom's way. And then please feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat bar that you'll find at the bottom of the screen, and it might also pop up on the right-hand side for you as well. So Tom, welcome. I'd love to hear where you're calling in from today and what you've been up to during lockdown so far.
Ginny, it's a great pleasure to be here with you, and I want to just wish everyone a happy Friday. It's 5 p.m. where I'm at. I'm in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and again, really looking forward to this conversation, and just delighted to be here chatting with Ginny.
Great, it's lovely to have you.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask if there's anything interesting you've been up to during the last few months.
Well, I have been reading. So one of the books I've been reading, rereading, has been this book, Chaos. Because what better book to read during this time period than Chaos? The other two books I've been reading has been one, I just finished this, it's called The Symbiotic Planet, very interesting. And then The Web of Life, which shows how interconnected we are. And it also talks about the origins of life and how germs shouldn't be viewed as the enemy because life germinated from germs, microscopic organisms. So I thought it was a great book. These two books really put into perspective just how interconnected and interdependent we all are. And then finally, this book, Prisoners of Geography, excellent. And then I think this book's going to be, to reread this again, Clash of Civilizations by Sam Huntington. So that's what I've been doing. I have been having a lot more time on my hands. Also been watching a lot of Netflix, The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. So it hasn't been all reading. And so that's what kind of I've been doing during this whole lockdown.
Amazing. It's great to hear your book selection. So if you need anything new to add to your reading list, then make sure you've jotted down some of those things that Tom's just suggested. I've also been watching The Last Dance and been very inspired by Michael Jordan and his amazing work ethic. So going back to 2002, tell us a little bit more about Gobi Partners and how it all began.
Yeah, well, Gobi, Gobi Partners, we actually, when you talk about life's challenges, I remember we decided to set up Gobi the week before 9/11. So I remember, the three of us got together, we're very excited, said, hey, let's do this. We're going to set up Gobi. And then a week later, 9/11 hits. And we all sat there and we said to ourselves, maybe we should go back and ask for our old jobs back because the world had fundamentally changed. We decided to go ahead. We set up Gobi in 2002 in Shanghai. And as many of you will remember, when we started to launch our first fund in 2003, that's when SARS hit. So again, it was a very difficult period. It kind of gave us some preparation for what we're going through now, but COVID-19 is on a much, much bigger scale. And then if you think about it, we started that Gobi back in 02, 03, SARS hits. Then we hit the 08, 09 the financial crisis, and now we're in COVID-19. So if anything, it seems like, timing is everything. And it seems like the world's getting more turbulent in many ways. And so that's kind of how we started back in 02.
Oh. So you really have seen it all in the last 18 years. And that's why a little bit later when we touch on some of the challenges and how people can be navigating them, I'm really excited to hear some of your insights there as well. So just to touch a little bit more, venture capitalist, what value does Gobi Partners bring to startups other than just capital?
Yeah, well, I think it's really a couple of things. The first one is we started off in China. And our thesis was that we wanted to be in underserved markets where there was a shortage of capital. We have a fundamental belief that great entrepreneurial talent is evenly distributed across the globe, but access to opportunity is not. And so Gobi's mission is to try to bridge that gap. The first market we went into where there was a severe gap was actually China. So when we went into China in 02, China was an underserved market. There was a huge capital shortage. And I remember when I first went to China, it was actually a lot of the Chinese companies, investors who told me that, China wasn't really ready to innovate. And I remember meeting US institutional LPs who told me, why are you doing venture capital in China? China is just good at low-cost manufacturing. They may never innovate. And I remember that very clearly. And of course, when you look at how China's developed, the rest is all history. But time and time again, we've faced skepticism in the markets that we've entered. And we've kind of decided to take our own path and gone into those markets anyway. Another example, Ginny, would be when we went into Southeast Asia back in 2010. I remember meeting some prominent Singaporean venture capitalists who at that point said, in 2010, they were like, hey, we're ready to go into China. We were already in there since 02. We were looking to go to Singapore, and they said, China's where all the action's at. We're leaving Southeast Asia. Why are you coming to Singapore now? And we said, well, beg to differ. We think based on our data, Southeast Asia is going to be a big opportunity. And again, we've taken that view again and again, which is why we're also now going into Pakistan. Again, we faced that same type of skepticism. But again, based on what we've seen, we believe that Pakistan is going to be one of the biggest opportunities going forward.
What is it for you when you see those opportunities? Is it sort of a gut sense, or what is it you look at to make some of those decisions about where you're either doing work or planting offices?
Well, I think the first one is, Ginny, the demographics, right? When we looked at the general demographics of China back in 2002, again, a lot of people saw risk. We saw opportunity, right? A huge homogenous market in many ways, right? Common language, common culture, really smart people, very low labor costs, and a shortage of capital. Most people saw risk. We saw opportunity. I think we were very fortunate in that we've enjoyed some success from investing in China. We took that mindset and then applied it to Southeast Asia. Right? Same thing. When we went into Southeast Asia in 2010, we looked at it again. Fantastic demographics, even younger than China. Right? Again, people looked at when a lot of folks see lack of infrastructure, they see risk. We see opportunity because we think then those economies can leapfrog. Right? And so we saw those same conditions in Southeast Asia. Now we're seeing those same conditions in Pakistan, in South Asia. We're starting to see those same conditions in the Middle East, and eventually we're seeing them already now in Africa as well. So I think when others see risk, we see opportunity.
It's almost to use a American football analogy, you're choosing to play offense when other people might be playing defense a little bit more heavily.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely, Ginny. And I think the other thing, again, to use that football analogy, was we believe in building out a ground game, which means investing heavily into local offices. Because for early stage venture investing, you have to be on the ground, right? You can't be doing what I call tourist investing. It was like in the old days when, look, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, everybody wants to live there, right? But if you really wanted to do early stage investing in China back then, you couldn't be running that out of San Francisco. And it's the same thing. You cannot be investing in Southeast Asia or in Pakistan, in the nice city of Shanghai. You have to go to those cities. You have to build an on-the-ground presence. And that's the strategy we've been implementing.
It's really interesting to hear. I know we've got a few people from different places around the world on the call and also watching on Facebook Live. I'd love to know what your perspective is on what some of the differences or similarities are in how VCs in Asia operate versus other places around the world.
Well, I think in Asia, first of all, when we look at companies in Asia, maybe a little different than how they look at in other places. One of the things we look at is there a successful case that we may have seen in China? We call it a reference case. And so if we see there's a reference case in China that's worked, and if they're taking that same model and applying it, that for us gives us more conviction, right? Because again, I think the recent China venture experience may be more relevant for a lot of these emerging markets, in that the China market was more, China's market 15 years ago is very similar to today to a lot of the emerging markets. It's the same types of conditions. I always laugh in that when I talk to my friends in the Valley, Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, and don't get me wrong, best in the world, but they make certain assumptions too. And what I've heard from other people is that the Silicon Valley investors, entrepreneurs, are great at operating what I call the weird markets, right? And what do I mean by that? Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, right? So, the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs are the best at operating in those markets. And so when they operate in a market, they just assume there are certain conditions that are prevalent. When you're coming to these emerging markets, sometimes they just don't exist, right? And I think sometimes the China experience may be a little bit more relevant. So I think for Asian VCs, when we're looking at it, one is looking at a successful reference case that may have worked in China. The second thing we also look for is, again, given our China experience, we totally believe in homegrown innovation in the local markets. Because we were there in China when a lot of US investors, Ginny, back in 2002, US investors would ask me, yeah, China's got some interesting things going on, but is that real innovation, right? And I remember answering to them, I said, I don't know how you define innovation. And I've been quoted for saying this. I said, innovation is a little bit like pornography, right? I don't know how to define it, but I know it when I see it, right? And there's innovation going on. So again, the attitude was that, oh, well, yeah, there's kind of things going on, but it's not real innovation, as if, one locality had a monopoly on that. And again, we take the mindset that there is tremendous innovation in all of these emerging markets. And we also want to invest into that homegrown innovation, because one day that homegrown innovation may impact the entire planet. And so we want to get in there. And so we believe there's great entrepreneurs everywhere in the world. Most of them just lack access to the capital.
Such an interesting hearing your perspective and the mindset as well that you sense people operate out of, depending on where they're based. It reminds me a little bit of, I've done some work with Steve Case before, who runs.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And his perspective on trying to bring capital and resources to some of the companies that live outside of the valley, and
Absolutely, Steve. He's a big proponent of Rise of the Rest.
Yeah.
And that's not only for just think about that kind of bias even happens in the US, where a company, if you're not even in Silicon Valley, if you're, for example, a startup in Pittsburgh, you're not even getting access. And so I love what he's been doing. And I think, again, democratizing access to opportunity is really what VCs, we should be doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I work as the pitch coach on his Rise to the Rest tours, so I have a big passion for everything that he does. So another question for you, a bit more philosophical now. Many people during this pandemic have talked about having the opportunity to reflect on certain things. Are there any reflections that you've had either personally or professionally over the last few months?
Yeah, no, I think first of all, it's been a difficult time. I think I've been much more fortunate than so many others. But again, it's been tough as well, being just kind of under lockdown. In Malaysia, they call it MCO, Movement Control Order. That's also interesting. Every country's come up with like these, these terms that make it sound better, right, than what it actually is. And so during MCO, I think a couple of key thoughts. The first one is more of a funny one. Is with everybody doing Zoom calls, I've often wondered if the sale of breath mints has gone down because we don't need that anymore. So that's one. But no, more seriously though. But I think the virus really is the biggest wake-up call for humanity. And so if this really doesn't bring us together, I don't know what will. Right? The virus for me has just shown how interdependent we all are, right? And how now the world's biggest problems respect no borders, no nationalities. We're all equal in the eyes of the virus, right? It doesn't matter if you're Jeff Bezos or if you're just, someone who lives down the street from me, right? The virus can attack everybody. And these problems, and so that's the first one, is how interdependent, and how vulnerable we actually all are. I think that's the first reflection, right? And then the second reflection is, what are we going to do about that? And so for me, there's been this real thought of, we've got to move towards more purpose-driven innovation, right? The world has these very large problems, and we got to take them seriously. I mean, people have been talking about the pandemic for decades. Nobody thought it actually hit. People have been talking now about climate change, deteriorating oceans, accumulating plastic waste. And so I think for me, the reflection is, again, like most people, I've been kind of thinking, that's going to happen. That's going to be a problem for my kids. I think it's going to be a problem for us, and it's going to be now. And when COVID is over, again, I think another big thing is we're gonna, this year is gonna be a huge demarcation point, right? It's gonna be like BC and AD. BC meaning before COVID, and AD meaning after disease, right? The 2020 is gonna be one of those key years. And so for humanity, I think the problems that we think aren't gonna affect us, they're going to affect us, and we better start getting solutions to them now. So when COVID is over, climate change, that's still there, right? Access to healthcare services, the inequality, it's still there. How are we going to solve those? And so I think those are the bigger problems, and I think VCs, all of us, are going to shift much more towards, impact investing and what I call purpose-driven innovation, to really now solve those problems, because they're not going away, and we better take them seriously.
Yeah, it's all the things that have come up during this crisis, as you said, of there being a great leveler in terms of this affecting all of us, but also some of the things that we now need to spend our attention on or focus on as well. And of course, breath mints, like you said. I mean, that is, I didn't think you would say that. The decrease in the sales of breath mints, very important to note. I want to look a little bit more at some of the challenges that startups are facing, and think if you were to sit down with one of your portfolio companies right now, I think I've actually worked with one of them in the past, Origami Labs. But if you were to sit down with one of them and give them some advice as to what things they should be ignoring, where they should be focusing, what would you say?
Well, I think the first thing, since Ginny, you love sports, it would be like, the NCAA basketball, right? The March Madness tournament. I would give them the advice, which would be survive and advance, right now, this is unprecedented. And I know there's been a study saying people have been using the word unprecedented in an unprecedented way, right? So first of all, it is unprecedented. So the first thing is survive, right? You got to cut down your burn. You get your cost structure to fit the opportunity right now. There's no shame in that. The second thing is for senior management, you really got to share the pain equally. If you're asking your team to sacrifice, you have to lead with an even bigger sacrifice before the rest of the team will follow. And so that would be some immediate advice. The second one would be the advice we've been calling it the 3 R's, right? Which would be, you have to be resilient, right? And resilient means you just got to be able to recover from this situation. You have to be adaptable. The second part of that is you have to be resourceful. Once you've recovered, you can stand up again after you've been hit. Now you got to be you got to come up with clever solutions and see what are the new opportunities. And then longer term is rethink. One of my friends told me something, which is during this period and going forward, we have to think the unthinkable, right? And I'll talk more about that. And it's just, everything we've assumed has been turned on its head. And I think there's going to be a permanent shift in many industries. A lot of us are still holding on to the hope that at some point once they have the vaccine, we're all going to go back to normal. Well, we got to think the unthinkable. What happens if there is no vaccine? I think there's going to be some permanent shifts in our lives, our daily lives, and companies need to start thinking about that. Some will capitalize, and again, some will suffer from that.
A lot of things you're touching on there are almost characteristics or attributes of just good leadership, of being resourceful, resilient, and some of those things coming to the forefront right now. Zooming out a little bit from some of your portfolio companies, from your perspective, which companies or business models are at risk right now in this current situation?
Oh, yeah. So I think, again, 2 immediately come to mind. One is we've got a lot of companies in the travel space, and those have been severely impacted. So, for example, we have a company called Holiday Me was doing fantastic. December was their best month ever. Again, they're focused on travel for Muslims, and they have online tour packages for Umrah travel, right? So making that accessible, being able to give you an online visa to go to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This is all great stuff. Best month they ever had. And again, COVID hits, right? So that's an example. Another one would be our, again, company in Pakistan called Sasta Ticket, right? Again, people in Pakistan slowly buying travel online. And the percentage right now is so small. So all you need is a fractional movement for them to go online. And then all of a sudden your revenues will go up. So again, short term, COVID really impacted them. But long term, they're going to be a beneficiary because nobody wants to now buy tickets in an offline manner. They prefer to do it through a mobile phone or online, right? So I think short term, there'll be a big impact. But again, longer term, all these travel companies should be beneficiaries. But again, like I was saying, you have to be able to survive now because revenues have essentially dropped off a cliff, right? So that's one sector that's really been hit. Another sector, we're in a company right now called Sandbox VR, Ginny, and their vision is to bring a holodeck. You know that concept, right, from Star Trek? They make virtual reality games. They want to bring a holodeck to every neighborhood. It's the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. Okay, the problem is, though, you all have to gather together in one space. It's still retail driven. And so, again, they've been severely impacted. Short term, they've been hit. But again, longer term, again, some of now the tweaks that they're doing to the business will make them a long-term survivor and also thrive in the new environment. So again, those are two industries in the short term that have been hit.
For startup founders, for startup community builders, because I think we have a few that are on the call or who are watching this, what kinds of things can they be doing to motivate the startups in their communities right now?
Well, I think what most of them are doing already is the importance of networking and relationships now becomes, more important now more than ever, right? This is where you've got to lean on those relationships. Think about all the great talented people that may have been laid off, right? So again, if you can find opportunities, share those resources, that's a huge value add for the community. Letting people know where there are sources of funding. A lot of the governments are stepping up, but as is sometimes typical with governments, great intentions, maybe not so good on the execution. So how do you get access to all the capital that the governments want to help by giving out to startups, but how do you even access that? So again, any tips that people in the community have on sharing those with startups, that's fantastic. And then just being a sympathetic shoulder to lean on, or listen, because again, the mental health stress, nobody really talks about that, but it must be very large as well. And so just being there for each other to listen, I think is also very important as well.
It sounds like you're saying there's a great need for compassion right now, but also for collaboration. Have you seen many startups or entrepreneurs doing that well in this time of collaborating well with one another? Or
yeah, I think again, as competitive as we are in the VC space, there have been acts, right? Right now, there is, at least in Southeast Asia, there's been one big list, right, of really great people who have been made redundant. And it's a Google Docs list that goes around. People are looking. So companies that are looking are going through that list. People who unfortunately have to make people redundant are putting, their great employees on that list so they can find, opportunities. So you've got that list going on. We're now having a lot of these, online pitching sessions where, again, VCs, we've been very competitive in the past, but we realize that there's more synergies or more impact we can make if we just, instead of having 10 different events, we have one big event where all of us participate and we get access to all the startups. And so you're seeing collaboration, as you were pointing out, and that's going to be very, very important going forward.
It's interesting that the scale of some of the events grow as people come together as well. Sorry, my doorbell's just going.
No worries.
There was something called the Global Hack, which brought together 20,000 entrepreneurs from across the world. It was an incredible event and a great example of that as well. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the opportunities. We'll move into a slightly more hopeful, optimistic space. What companies are Gobi partners looking to invest in right now? Sorry, let me just pause myself for a sec. My doorbell is going off again. I'll turn it off in a sec. Clearly a very, very busy delivery person. Sorry, the question was, what companies are Gobi partners looking to invest in right now, and will they change the way that they invest moving forwards?
Yeah, maybe let me answer that question in a slightly different way. So I think within our portfolio, there are certain companies that have really been beneficiaries. And again, those are the types of companies we'd be looking at. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So we're in a company called Prenetics. And Prenetics started off, it's a little bit like 23andMe, right? So they could do, you do a saliva swab, and then they could kind of measure you get your ancestry, break down your DNA and kind of give you, your genetic traits. During the crisis, they immediately pivoted, worked with labs in Hong Kong, and now they've come up with a test just using your saliva to test for COVID-19. Wow. And Ginny, you're in London now. I can tell you, they're now working with the English Premier League for these tests, and they're working with one of the clubs, and it may be implemented on even a larger scale, because if you're going to bring back professional sports, the first thing you have to be able to do is test on a large scale, right? So I've seen those photos, I'm sure you've seen them well, where somebody's sticking, one of those cotton swabs that are about a foot long down your nose. That's very intrusive. What Prenetics has done is you just take, your saliva, put it in a test tube, get it tested, and if you're negative or positive, okay? So that's a company that showed resourcefulness, right? They pivoted from their business model, saw an opportunity. Another great example would be our company. If you think about it, everybody's staying home, right? So obviously, Zoom's been a beneficiary, Netflix. I'll give you another example. Everybody's staying at home. Everybody's cooking at home, right? But when you're cooking at home, you sort of run out of recipes and you run out of ideas. So one of our companies is called Day Cook. It is one of the largest online cooking channels. The founder is a woman, Norma Chu. She is a celebrity in China and Hong Kong. She's seen her traffic go up by 300%, right? Because everybody's going on, you run out of, you want to eat some new recipes. And so again, they've been a beneficiary. And so those are examples of companies, right, that are seeing opportunities because of a lot of the change in behavior, right? So companies in those spaces, other areas, autonomous vehicles. So we're in a company called AutoX, and the pickup there, the interest in autonomous vehicles has really gone up, because now with the virus, many people are afraid, right, to go take public transportation.
Yeah.
So, whether that will recover in the short term remains to be seen. A lot of people, unfortunately, still have to take it. But again, you're in enclosed spaces, so buses, subways. A lot of people would love to take, individual cars. But again, you may pick up the virus from the driver. The driver may also be afraid of picking up the virus from the passenger. One of the ways to solve that is to have autonomous vehicles where there is no driver. So I think, again, that's accelerated the adoption of AV technology. So again, those are some examples of the sectors we're looking at. Yeah.
So for startup founders, whether they sit within one of those opportunity areas or not, if they are pitching to VCs or to try and raise funds at the moment, what kinds of things do you think they should be focusing on to grab people's attention?
Well, the first thing is, please don't tell me we need to spend $100 million and we're going to be cash negative for like the next 5 years. I think that's a definite, what I would call BC approach, before COVID, right? I think that approach is just not going to fly anymore. It's just because the funding environment has drastically changed. Whether or not there's going to be a lot of follow-on funding remains to be seen. Right now, Ginny, I can tell you, all the VCs are essentially performing an exercise like what the doctors are doing, right? You're looking at your entire portfolio and you're immediately sorting through the portfolio, going, who are the healthy companies, right? Companies with runways of 6 months, even healthier companies, runway of 12 months. You're saying those are healthy companies, I'm going to put them aside. Any company with runway of less than 6 months, you're putting on your watch list. And then you have to decide, because your reserve capital is limited, nobody ever prepared that every company in your portfolio would come asking for reserve capital at the same time. I mean, that's, again, I hate to use it, that's unprecedented, right? That we've never seen that happen before, but that's happening right now. So if you're an entrepreneur, you've got a great idea and you can control that burn, I think that would make it very attractive, or you can show how quickly, you can get to a break even. That's something that's going to become more important for investors going forward.
You noted a couple of red flags in there, of things, sort of even narrative or ways people are describing funding and other things at the moment. Are there any other red flags that would put you off investing in a company, or you would suggest startup founders avoiding, there's areas people should avoid talking about right now when they're pitching?
Yeah, I think you don't need to tell us about, we'll be able to go IPO in a year. It's just, that may not be very, it's not something anybody, it's not believable right now. And two, I think everybody's more focused on the short term, right? And I think the one good thing about the virus is it's really kind of flushing out what I call the weaker entrepreneurs. And what I mean by weaker entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs with less commitment. I think before COVID, a lot of people thought it'd be kind of fun and glamorous to be an entrepreneur, right? There was a lot of readily available capital, and now we're seeing just how difficult it is. So this period, we're really going to see who's really committed to being an entrepreneur. Those entrepreneurs who stay committed are going to be the big winners. But again, a lot of people are going to fold early because they're not going to be able to take the pain.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. We'll look at a few questions now about beyond COVID-19. And if you were currently watching this on Facebook Live or in this conversation itself, this is your chance to start asking questions, and we'll come to those in a minute. So please jot some things down in the chat, and anybody who's on Facebook will try and find a way of feeding in some of those questions as well. But one of my questions to you, Tom, is what will some of the changes to the investor landscape be beyond this, when this starts to settle, whenever that might be?
Yeah, I think, again, a lot of groups, starting off in this environment, may not be able to last through. Even some more established groups that don't have the solid relationships or channels for funding may have real issues raising their next fund. So I think you're going to see kind of a shakeout and consolidation in the VC landscape. I think, again, the LPs are going to get even more selective. You're just going to have to deliver results. And so any VC that can deliver returns during this period, that's going to be, that's how you kind of differentiate versus all the other groups out there. So there's going to be a focus on that. So again, you've got to survive and advance. You've still got to try to deliver returns to your very demanding limited partners. And then for groups that can't, again, you're going to see, I think, the industry kind of shrinking. So I think in the short term, that's probably what's going to happen. Yeah.
Sort of like a survival of the fittest process almost.
Yeah, we saw that same, it played out after the dot-com bubble that happened again in China during SARS. I remember when we were in Shanghai, it was only down to 3 VCs. A lot of people ended up going to other jobs that they viewed as more stable. Again, then think about after 08, 09, the same. But again, the industry goes through cycles. So this is going to be a particularly prolonged and painful one.
Is there anything in particular that you foresee happening in Asia across the next couple of months or years as a result of this?
Well, I think, again, what COVID has done is I think it's only going to increase the confidence of Asia. What do I mean by that? If you think about just even going back, traditionally Asia, again, this is on a broader level, Asia's always looked towards the West, the United States, for leadership, right? And I think, if just a broad observation, when you look at what's happened, even the debate on whether or not people should be wearing masks, I think people in Asia just said, hey, we've had some experience. We think masks probably makes a difference. Whereas I think in the West, they were still kind of debating that. And then it was proven that masks actually can cut down transmission. So when you look at, again, that's just anecdotes. When you look at it, it gives, I think, local Asian entrepreneurs the confidence that, again, a lot of the solutions to the problems in Asia are going to be solved by the entrepreneurs in Asia, right? Not necessarily, we don't necessarily have to rely on a great entrepreneur in Silicon Valley to come and solve it, right? So I think just a longer macro trend, Ginny, will be that Asia, again, will become more self-reliant on homegrown technologies and innovations. And I think that's going to be a long-term impact.
I was just going to say, it sounds like that can only be a good thing for Asia and also for the rest of the world, to see entrepreneurs in Asia rising up in confidence and being strengthened by some of this.
Yeah, well, why not? I think we need everybody in the fight, right? That's what I've always believed. Yeah.
Well, keep on dropping your questions in the chat. We'll come to a few of those in a second. One other question I had, Tom, is what are you excited about 2021? I know it feels like maybe a long way off right now, but what opportunities do you think will be there that haven't existed before?
I think again, 2021. I think 2020 will again be a huge demarcation point where this growth in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, right, and impact investing. I think there's no better time for impact investing to really take off. And I believe all investing should be impact investing, right? Think about all the limited partners we talk to. You know, these institutions with billions of dollars, and they're all hoarding it, right? And they're going into, they're saving it for a rainy day, right, Ginny? Isn't that what we've always heard? I'd argue that that rainy day is here. And it's not only raining, it is a goddamn storm, right? So what's everybody waiting for, right? I mean, the people who are administering those huge sums of money, they're all investing in these, what they call less risky assets, real estate, government bonds. When you look at it now, is real estate really, you know, when nobody's going to work, is that less risky now? When you're investing into U.S. government treasuries and the U.S. government's, you know, they're doing what they should. But again, you know, issuing $3 trillion, does that make the U.S. government bonds, you know, and again, at interest rates that are so low? Why isn't, I would hope that after this crisis, people look at that money and say, we better start investing into the solutions that will save us. And we better start doing it now rather than sitting on it. Mm-hmm. And so I see that as a huge opportunity. I mean, why isn't that money being channeled, right? I mean, people have been, again, it comes back to my first point, which is experts have been warning us about a global pandemic decades ago, and it happened. And for most of us, including myself, we were caught unaware, like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. Well, now if you go back, everybody's talking about climate change, right? Coastal flooding, again, oceans that are deteriorating, poisons. I mean, these are all problems. Yeah. And it's not like nobody's warning us about them. We need to solve them. And I think, again, this could be the turning point. And again, that comes back to my theme of purpose-driven innovation. I think in the past, you know, entrepreneurs were focusing, and I'm not saying that's not relevant, but you know, how many entrepreneurs have we met who've come up with a better way to convert clicks into transactions? And that's great, very important for e-commerce, don't get me wrong. But I would argue now that with everybody on e-commerce and everybody buying more, now we're generating so much more waste as well from all the packaging from e-commerce. Can we try to solving those issues? Because otherwise, we're going to be living in a world with all cardboard boxes and plastic coverings that we're discarding, right? You also asked me now about another big thought. Well, here's another big thought from COVID. You know, everybody's wearing masks. What's happening to all those used masks? I'd love to find out what's going on there, right? I mean, how do you even safely dispose of all that PPE? Somebody doing that? I would think that's going to be a big opportunity as well. So those are just some big thoughts. Again, I'm hoping that this next generation will really seize upon that because I think it's for the good of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I hadn't thought about before is what happens with all the masks and some of the problems that will have come out of this crisis and that we again would have been caught off guard with unless we think about it now. Yeah. There's some great questions coming in for you on the chat and through Facebook as well. So let me just ask you a couple. Yama has asked, or he said he would love to hear your thoughts on impact investing and social finance. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts that you can share with us on that.
I think, again, I think we touched upon it earlier. I just think it's a great time. I think, again, if you think about it, all investing should be impact investing, right? If we know we're investing in something that's bad for us, we probably should not be investing into it. And again, I'm grossly oversimplifying it, but if you just think about it, it makes sense, right? And so I really think it's a huge opportunity. Again, for young people, it could be for old people. I just think this is going to be a theme. When you ask me about what's going to happen, I think this really should open up, again, pun intended, the floodgates, right, for capital to go into social, impact investing. Because when else should we be doing it? And if COVID-19 has not proven that to us, I don't know what will.
No, absolutely. And the next question touches slightly on what we were just talking about, which is, what can companies like Gobi do to bring together everybody to address things like climate change?
Well, I think again, we're only a very, very small piece of the puzzle. I think we all have to come together. And that's what I love about the venture community, right? Um, I've always believed that networks beat hierarchies. And I think when you look at Ginny, some of the things you're doing, the communities that we've been involved, why are so many people interested? Because you can empower. This is a non-traditional way of empowering individuals with the energy and the enthusiasm. The traditional models have all been hierarchies, and hierarchies have been great, right? The Industrial Revolution, it just human organizational theory. When you think about that, it's been always kind of command and control. I think we are now going into an era where you have flatter networks, where individuals are empowered. Together we can make great change. And I think, again, that's something that's going to come out. Again, COVID-19, if you think about it, when you look at what's going on around the world, where again, the traditional authority figures that we've looked up to, governments, in many ways, the governments have kind of, been less effective this time, right? Again, not blaming anybody because nobody knew about this virus, right? It's always easy to complain. But when you think about the organizations that have stepped up to really fill that void in terms of leadership, it's been grassroots, maybe flatter social organizations that have stepped up and really made an impact. And I think that's going to be one of the key takeaways, right? Where these big hierarchical structures, maybe they're, in the new world where we're in, where we're all interconnected, again, I believe networks beat hierarchies. And I think that's going to be a key theme that comes out through this. And so what can Gobi be doing? We want to be a part of those networks that can help drive the change. And in these new networks, again, it's not owned by one company, but it's everybody pulling in the same direction. We're going to need everybody. And that's why Gobi believes we have to be in emerging markets. We have to make opportunity accessible to all those entrepreneurs, right, in the emerging markets, because you don't know where that next great idea is going to come from. We need everybody in the fight. That's what we think.
I mean, that's incredibly motivating, just in us thinking about our responsibility, where we may not have seen necessarily some of the leadership we've needed from elsewhere, just working out where we step up and lead well as well. So thank you for sharing that. There's a question here on, let me just take a second to read it. How we evaluate impact in the valuation of a company in the traditional sense. Hang on, I'm just trying to find the question in here. Give me one moment. Let me give you another question while I think on this one to word it well.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
I have a question just more personally. As a pitch coach, I'm always really interested to hear what is one of the best or most memorable pitches that you've ever heard?
Oh boy, I've heard many, but let me think. Okay, I think this pitch was so memorable. We created an entire investment practice around that. Would that be good? Okay.
Yeah.
So when I first came to Kuala Lumpur, as you can probably tell, I'm an American. I'm what they call an ABC, American-born Chinese. Spent most of my life growing up on Long Island. I was born in Brooklyn, grew up on Long Island. Then went to Hong Kong and then spent 13 years in Shanghai. And I thought I was a pretty, well-traveled, I knew the ways of the world. And I came to Kuala Lumpur, and it was my first time really living in a country where the majority of folks were Muslims. And so I came here, and I remember one of the first startups I met was a company called Trip Fez. And the founder was a gentleman called Faiz Fadila. And I met him, and I remember we were in the Orchid Room. If you've ever been to the Majestic Hotel in Kuala Lumpur, beautiful hotel. It's like Raffles in Singapore, right? This really heritage hotel, beautiful. And Ginny, if you're ever in Kuala Lumpur, I'll take you there. They have this room called the Orchid Room, where you have to pre-book it. Back in the day, it was weeks in advance because it was a very small room, temperature controlled, all surrounded by orchids. I mean, beautiful. Yeah. And they had the loveliest high tea. Okay? And so we were talking to Faiz, very close to doing something, and I said, I want to impress him, and so I booked that room. We went with my colleagues, it was Faiz and his co-founder Jurgen, and we sat there. I said, well, tell me about TripFez, and he just blew me away because TripFez was a travel app that was focused on Muslim-friendly travel. It was a Muslim-friendly travel online booking platform. And I remember he asked me, he said, Tom, I know you come from China, and China's a big market. And I said, yeah, 1.4 billion people. There's not many markets bigger than that. I said, even India is not as big. And he said, Tom, I'm operating in a market that's bigger than the China market.
Wow.
Okay, now he had my attention. I said, what's bigger than the China market? And he said, Tom, do you know the amount of Muslims in the world? Do you know how many Muslims there are in the world? I had no idea. And he said, it's 1.8 billion. And then I said, well, you've got my attention, right? And then he went through that pitch, walked me through the demographics, right? How young the population, the population is for Muslims, right? The key markets that it covered, and then how underserved it was, and then the specific requirements, right, for Muslims when they travel, things that they would like to have. And it was just like when Chinese travelers were going abroad, right? Chinese travelers, when they went to the West, I mean, they were looking for hotels that would serve congee, that would have tea in the morning, right? Again, if you think about it, it all makes sense. And so when Faiz told me that Muslim travelers, in many cases, also have similar requirements. For example, when they go to a room, they would prefer to have a prayer mat, right? They need to have, they need to know the direction when they pray. What's the direction to Mecca? And again, for example, in Kuala Lumpur, all the hotels will have an arrow in the hotel rooms pointing there. So again, what I realized was there was, again, specific requirements or needs, demands that Muslim travelers had, just like Chinese travelers had when they were going abroad for the first time. And it was through that connection and my relationship. So we ended up investing into TripFez. And from talking to Faiz, and we met other entrepreneurs, we created an investment thesis around that, which we call Taqwa Tech, which is on innovation, right, for Muslim consumers, businesses, and communities, right? Tech innovation. Yeah. And so that's really now become a very big practice at Gobi.
Wow. Such an inspiring story. It sounds like he not just piqued your curiosity, but opened your eyes up to this massive opportunity, which you just had to invest in and then build something new around. So what a great story. I was always interested to hear what kinds of pictures or things grab people's attention. I mean, that would definitely grab my attention. The room, I'm sure, helped things as well. Being in a room surrounded by orchids is definitely memorable.
Well, if I could give one advice to any of your viewers who decide to go there, bring a jacket because it's really cold in that room. Yeah, it's very cold.
I guess you probably wouldn't have one if you're walking outside. You might not have one, so you'd be surprised when you come into like icy room. This is maybe more a slightly philosophical question to throw in there, but what has been some of the proudest moments of your career so far?
Ooh, it's been a couple. I'd say, I think this one, it's a little bit different, which I think your viewers might like to hear. So I think one of the proudest moments was actually when I stepped in as the interim CEO for one of our companies. It was called DMG. And DMG was operating TV screens inside China's subway systems.
Oh. Okay.
So at one point, so we were in this, the company was installing TV screens on all the subway platforms. So it's like the Tube in London, right? So we would put screens at the station and inside the subway cars. And so when the train was pulling up, it would digitally count down as to when the next train was. And inside, they would show commercials. And we decided to create something called a subway soap opera. So Ginny, I don't know if you know this, I am the father of the subway soap opera.
I didn't know that.
I invented that. And so what we did is, because we realized we were operating these TV screens, essentially a TV network, inside China's subway stations, we were reaching about, I think at the height, 40, 50 million passengers a day, right? Which made us one of the biggest TV networks in the country. And so we decided to create something, a soap opera. We called it a sub opera, because we knew all of our passengers, would take the subway at least twice a day, right? In the morning commute and when they came home. And we timed each episode because the average train stop from station to station was about 3 minutes. So we created a sub opera where every day we showed one episode. Each episode was 2.5 minutes.
That's so good.
And it was all very short. And then when you put all the episodes together, it told a story. And we showed, the sub opera ran for 2 months. It was 8 weeks, 40 episodes. We showed all the reruns on the weekend. And it was the first integrated, like, omni-channel approach. So what we did was we showed the episodes on the subway, and then we had a website where you could watch it. And in fact, on YouTube, you can find episodes today. It's called A Sunny Day. And the story is very simple. Have you ever seen the French movie Amélie?
Yes.
So it's sort of like that. It's about someone who lives in Shanghai. She, because of a very tragic backstory, she decides to do good deeds for people inside China's subway systems. And she writes a blog. And the greatest part about it was we got Starbucks to sponsor it. And so it was kind of sponsored content. We did this sub opera around Starbucks, so she'd always be blogging from a Starbucks. And we launched it together when Starbucks launched their Frappuccino in Shanghai. And that became one of their most successful marketing campaigns. It was so successful, I actually got to meet Howard Schultz when he came to Shanghai. And I even saw him play ping pong in Xintiandi in Shanghai. So again, that's probably one of the, I'm proud of that because it took us to something that I've never done before. So I became an executive producer. The star of the sub opera was one of China's biggest stars, a guy called Huang Xiaoming. So if any of your viewers know who he is, he's a superstar. And then he also provided the soundtrack for that sub opera.
I mean, I would love you to bring something similar to the tubes in London. I think you could transform so many journeys, but that really does sound like an amazing story. And we've got time for a couple more questions, so I can see some coming in. And if you have any burning questions, this is your chance to ask in the chat. I've got one here from Pete Beckett, which says, with the world focused on more meaningful interactions and authentic messages, do you think this will force traditional businesses which reinvent themselves with every social trend to instead nail their colors to the mask? So the question's around the world is becoming a bit more focused on authentic messaging. Businesses that have normally, I've lost the question. Businesses that have normally reinvented themselves with every social trend, do you think they'll then be moving into nailing their colors in the mask a little bit more?
Well, look, I think authenticity is going to become very important, especially for brands going forward, right? I think, how you're communicating, and again, I think for example, I think again, I'm not quite exactly but for the questioner, again, if you're a big FMCG company, right, and we work with a couple of them, and it's great that you're selling all these products, but you're generating all this waste, there's going to be a day of reckoning. Right. So I think all these brands are going to need to start rethinking, the packaging. And that's why, for again, Gobi, we just made an investment in a company called Inno, which is, creating biodegradable packaging. Right. And so that's going to be used by airlines. And that's something that companies everywhere are going to have to reconcile. You want to sell more things, but can we sell more things and sacrifice the environment? Is there a way we can sell more things and actually, do better for the planet? Right. So I've often, asked our colleagues, can we be investing into, imagine we can invest into car engines that actually clean the air. Right. Can we invest into, new materials, clothes that actually kill viruses? Can we invest into, could we ever create an experience where, you want to go to vacation at your hospital, right? Why couldn't we do that? And I think, again, I mean, if you're really brainstorming, I think this is a great opportunity. I think this is a little bit off the topic, and I apologize to Pete there, but as I'm thinking, this is a great opportunity to rethink air travel, right? All of us have taken so many plane rides. This is the perfect opportunity to get rid of the middle seat.
Yeah.
Right? And when I talk about reinventing air travel, Ginny, think about this. Everybody's worried about, bringing over the infection to their country. And so everybody's putting people into quarantine for 14 days. Well, here's an idea. Shouldn't all the customs and immigration systems be linked? Right? So if you're tested, so you're negative for the virus in the UK, and if you're coming over to Hong Kong, shouldn't somehow the government of Hong Kong know that you're already, right? And so then the contact tracing can actually start before you've even entered the country. But that means the systems need to be integrated and coordinated. Right? Wouldn't this be a good time to rethink that? But again, that demands collaboration and coordination on a global scale. And so again, it brings me back to my central point, which is, again, governments are still thinking in terms of nation states. Whereas individuals like ourselves, perhaps we're the ones that may create the platforms that transcend nation state borders. And because I think that's how we need to fight those bigger, right, global problems.
Yeah. So many things we haven't thought of, and suddenly you're making me think about all the horrendous flights that I've taken and why nothing has changed or been innovated in so many years.
I mean, air travel hasn't changed in 50 years, if you think about that.
Yeah, it's true. Somebody needs to come in and make those seats a little bit comfier, for sure.
There you go. Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're almost out of time, and I just wanted to know, Tom, if there's anything that you wanted to leave us with, or anything that you wanted to touch on that we haven't, any questions I haven't yet brought to you that you wanted to share with us.
Well, again, I think we're at an interesting crossroads here, right? And so what I would hate to see is we go from COVID to Cold War, right? And I think that's really an issue we all have to be mindful of. Again, when I look at this, a lot of the governments, everybody's kind of flailing. I mean, nobody's been perfect, because this is just nobody's ever been prepared for this. This is what I call an extinction level event, right? This virus, and you don't want to be a dinosaur. You want to be a mammal. And again, that's something we would tell the startups, right? So be a mammal, be adaptable, be flexible. So because it's been an extinction level event, nobody's really thought through the long-term impact and consequences. But one of the short-term things we are worried about is, as governments, flailing in some sense, they start looking for scapegoats. And again, it's happening on both sides, right? And so that's something we all need to be mindful of. That's a worst case scenario. If we go from COVID to Cold War, that's the pessimistic scenario. The optimistic scenario would be we come out of this and we realize how interdependent we really are. And that a lot of these petty, differences you read about in the headlines, they're really not important in the larger scheme of things, which is this virus. It's going to take a global Manhattan Project, and it's not happening. I certainly believe we could be doing a lot more, right? We could put a man on the moon, and I understand that this virus is very sneaky. It's hard to get a vaccine, but I'm sure if the entire planet was pulling in the same direction, why couldn't we solve this? But we need that leadership.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's something I hope maybe if you're not getting it from the hierarchies, maybe the networks of individuals, right, of community builders, of entrepreneurs, of VCs, incubators. Right? If all of us came together and pushed, maybe that's the alternative.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tom. We'll wrap up there in a second, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your insights, your wisdom. You certainly opened my mind up to be thinking a bit more about being collaborative, grasping opportunities that are in front of us. And in your words, acting more like a mammal than a dinosaur. So
there you go. There you go. Don't be a dinosaur, right?
I love it. Thank you. And thank you for everybody that's joined us this morning, whether it's on Facebook or in this chat, for your input, for the questions. You've made this interview even more impactful and interesting. So it's a goodbye from us, and thank you so much once more to Tom again for sharing his insight with us this morning or this afternoon. All right, take care everybody, and we'll speak soon. All right, bye.
Bye.